Welcome to another episode of Just Jordan. Wait, this is something different. Welcome to From Wise to Wise, a new podcast about breaking generational trauma and overcoming victim mentality. I'm Jordan, and this is my mom, Danni, aka the Niche Lady. She has over 100,000 subscribers on YouTube and 25 years of reselling experience, and is currently the source of most of my generational trauma.
The two of us have had decades of therapy, self-help, and relationship repair that took us from dysfunctional to estranged to having a happy, healthy relationship. And we want to help other people do the same.
We're going to deep dive down the rabbit hole of what those relationships look like, where we started, and how we got to where we are today, because we truly understand that having those hard conversations is a skill you have to learn, and the only way to learn it is to see an example of somebody else doing it. I think this is the perfect topic to set the stage for how we're going to be looking at generational differences, because your generation actually did not even know that this term existed, and my generation was broadly accepted. It kind of is the reason that we are the way we are and have experienced so much trauma across generations. So we're going to deep dive into what neurodiversity is, how it has shaped our experience, the difference of our childhoods with it, with the diagnosis and without, how we got diagnosed later in life, and how it's impacted the way we think and our relationships. So that being said, let's dive in. Mom, why don't you give a little bit of background on yourself? How old are you? What generation are you? Let's start there. I'm a millennial, and my mom, basically a boomer.
No, Gen X.
What's the difference?
Gen X. Actually, there's a big difference. There's actually a big difference. The baby boomer era is, that's my mom.
Oh, wait, hold on.
So,
let's put a timeline up really fast because I get all the generations mixed up. So it goes baby boomer, silent generation, baby boomer.
The boomers are the boomers.
Silent, baby boomer, Gen X, millennial, Gen Z, Gen Alpha, Gen Beta. That's what we're on?
Oh, you got a beta baby?
We got a beta baby. He's the first year of beta.
I'm not sure I like that title.
A beta baby. At some point, they're going to run out of, why'd we go alphanumeric all of a sudden? We had really cool, millennial.
Yeah, why do we even do this? But boomers that is, there isn't anything other than that. They have the memories of the generation prior to that. Are baby boomers the first to get a title? I think that's where it started.
The silent generation, I think, is before baby boomer.
I never heard that term.
All generations have
ever.
Some sort of title, I'm sure.
No, but this is what we're going to talk about. In my day, they didn't. Baby boomers came about because of all the soldiers returning from World War II, and there was an abundance of babies born in those years. And that's where the titling the generations began.
Interesting.
I'm pretty sure.
Well, we'll have to fact check that. But I think it's really interesting as we've had these conversations just casually, because that's what you do when you're, a professional yappers. We just have long drawn out conversations about generational differences. And I think it's really interesting how your generation and the ones previous, trend cycles and where you got your information was kind of one source. Whereas when we started getting into my generation and the introduction of social media, you kind of fell out of that pattern of everybody had the same experience. Everybody had the same cool thing. And now we get into really no one has the same thing anymore. I think I've said this a couple times. We're not going to have the quintessential everybody's seen this show like Game of Thrones anymore. You're not going to be able to go to work and be like, oh my God, everybody knew what happened on last night's episode of XYZ pop culture references. And that's just been diminishing through the generations. And it's going to be really interesting to look at all of the topics that we're talking about through that same lens, which today we're bringing up the topic of neurodiversity.
Yeah, because you have to remember, I'm older than Google.
That's scary.
It's true. You touched on it. Social media has changed everything.
It has. And it's interesting that we're talking about social media with neurodiversity in this first episode, because this is part of the reason that led to us being able to get a diagnosis later in life. And I think there's a lot of people that are becoming more familiar with this "that's not normal, that is normal" aspect of their neurodiversity, or whatever you want to call it, and it being shown to them in a different way. And I think that's really cool that it's happening, but also there's a lot of like negative that comes with that, and people that don't like the label and will criticize people for coming out later in life as neurodiverse, which I think is really interesting.
I think this is a really good point for a little disclaimer that we are not doctors. We have been diagnosed by those in the medical professions, and that we encourage anybody who's exploring this in themselves, don't let Google diagnose you. Actually go to a professional and explore it.
Yes, we are not experts in neurodiversity. We're just becoming experts in ourselves. And we sharing those experiences and what we're learning is what helps other people explore their own self. And that's what our intention is here to do today. Because if I hadn't heard somebody talking about the struggles that they experience, I wouldn't have internally looked at the things that I have going on and go seek professional help for it. So this is a starting point, not an ending point for you. But I want to know more about your generation and kind of the stigma around therapy and mental health, and kind of what prevented you from getting a diagnosis when you were younger. So what, like, that's the big thing. I think when we're talking about late diagnosed neurodiversity and the spectrum of neurodiversity, let's put up a description of what neurodiversity is and what it encompasses, because it's everything from ADHD, autism, OCD. There's a couple other ones in there. But when we speak about neurodiversity, it is a broad spectrum, and then there's spectrums within each individual diagnosis. So we're going to talk a lot about neurodiversity as a buzzword, and then ADHD as the specific diagnosis, and then autism as specific diagnosis that we have been diagnosed in our family.
Well, and let me just say that neurodiversity, the word itself, is really new and recent. It wasn't a word that was ever said in my generation. What was starting to happen when I was in my 20s is mental health was starting to become a focus. It was, you become the identified generation in a family, and there was a lot, that's the self-help kind of phase took off. Let's see, I'm doing math here. I'm about to turn 59. So I was 20. I was 20 when I went to my medical doctor, just family practice physician, because I was exhausted, just exhausted. And he says, "You just need rest." And he gave me a prescription. And I went home and I took that prescription. And there are 3 days of my life I don't remember. And I had a 3-year-old at the time.
That's scary.
And it really scared me. It was Valium.
Oh.
He gave me Valium.
Oh, okay. Just need some sleep, eh?
Yeah.
See.
And so that's when I started my journey into there's got to be a better way to fix these problems. And then, mind you, we did not have the internet. I know that is like so hard for current generations to comprehend, but there was no internet. You had to talk to people. You had to get referrals from people. You actually had to socialize to get information. So I did find a program, an inpatient program, because I was diagnosed then with severe depression and anxiety. And that really like launched my journey. I kind of went full bore into like, I don't want to feel this way anymore in my life. And I can tell you the journey, it never ends. It just never ends. And I know we're going to deep dive into like how do you get to these places, but it is an ongoing self discovery, learning how you think about things differently than other people. But there was absolutely no exploration of ADHD or autism or CPTSD, which is another one we'll talk
Well,
about.
I
None of
think it's
that.
interesting that we look to our medical professionals to be experts in everything that we have going on, but there is still so much that they're still learning. And obviously, a medical professional can't be, at home with you experiencing everything that you are going through. And they have this maybe 10-15 minute conversation with you to understand what's going on, and they have a solution. And yes, the Eastern versus Western medicine conversation can be had, but being able to advocate for yourself in a medical environment is so important. And I don't think that the access to information you needed to be able to advocate for yourself wasn't there back when you were going and trying to solve for this issue that you had. And what's also really interesting is the difference between like a mental health position and your just regular doctor saying like, oh, this is the solution for lack of sleep, not identifying it as something that could, need to be escalated to a specific mental health provider instead. um
Well, we didn't even really, we had medications coming on to the market, such Prozac. And I think I took just about every antidepressant there was back then, and they were all absolutely horrible. The side effects were like, I'd just rather be depressed because these side effects are just depressing me, kind of stuff. Um, but this was like the infancy of all this in the 80s. I mean, ADD didn't even become like a thing until the 80s, and it was all about children. There was no like adult ADD. Nobody, I guess, is just, hey, once you become an adult, it doesn't matter anymore. It only matters for how you pay attention in school.
this is a good time to bring up this book here that goes over the entire history of autism specifically, and um, the future of what neurodiversity looks like in our culture. But this book was a big eye opener. I got about this part. I have it bookmarked still because this is where it was like an aha moment. Autism was only diagnosed in the 1940s in Germany, if you're catching my drift. The original diagnosis was called Asperger's because of Dr. Asperger, who was part of
That thing we
the
can't
thing.
say on YouTube
Yeah.
without
He was doing trials on people imprisoned to find superior traits of neurodiversity, which led to the diagnosis of Asperger's being more high functioning, less support needs, essentially, autism. It's no longer a diagnosis because of that. But I still think that what's interesting is I hear a lot of your generation defaulting to, oh, well, it's not autism, it's just Asperger's, as kind of like a buffer. Like, it's not that bad. Like, autism is a dirty word.
Yeah, I personally never had that because, your brother was diagnosed with Asperger's, but it took a long time to get there even. There was a lot of, 20 years ago, diagnostics were a lot better. There's a lot more research and things. The first thing that you get is a diagnosis of not failure to thrive. It's, I forget the term of it, but it has to just do with development. Like things are not going the way they should according to all
The
these norms
milestones.
over here. Yes. And then when we got to the point where it was then considered on the spectrum and you're at the high functioning state, that's when they label it Asperger's.
Yeah, it's completely different now because we've again expanded the criteria of what it means. And we don't say high functioning, low functioning anymore. We say support needs because that's more one inclusive, and also reducing the stigma of that, like the dirtiness of what it means to have a disability, because there's still a huge stigma around having mental health problems. understanding the level of stigma now with my generation, I can only imagine how much worse it was back when you were younger, kind of labeling therapy as it was something you went to when things were bad, not something you used.
Well, because it made you undesirable. Like, oh, there's something wrong with
Mhm.
you. Oh, there's something wrong with you. You need to talk to somebody. When in truth, it really was like kind of the opposite.
It's weird hearing your story of what you experienced because it's the same thing I experienced just through a different lens. And imagine that. Neurodiversity is genetic. What?
Well, I just want to say, back when I was first getting into like the whole self-help, and yes, I was seeing somebody, but also I was consuming the books and I wanted to like feel normal. I'm like, okay, what do I do with this information now? Because I never ever in my entire life ever felt like I fit in. I was always the oddball. I was not picked to be in the team sports. And I became a teacher's pet because teachers liked me, because I was an overachiever in school and always tried to excel there, but always felt different, never fit in.
That's the exact same experience I had in childhood. And that teacher's pet component where you can perform and get praise and be seen by an adult figure. And I don't know if anyone's ever said this to you, but you're so mature for your age.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Oh, I kind of was the parent in my household from the time I was about 13. We'll get into
future
all of that later. there's a lot there.
But knowing what I know now, going back and putting the lens of like what I could have used in school to be able to actually get through school, because I almost flunked out of high school as well. High school was so challenging for me because either I couldn't stay awake in class or I
slept through driver's ed.
Wait a second. How do you sleep through?
Driver's ed was first. Wait. Driver's ed was first period. Wait, no, let me explain. Driver's ed was first period, and they usually played a movie in the dark.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
I just lay my head down and sleep.
Did you stay up all night when you were a teenager?
I don't remember.
Because I stayed up all night and either would be so excited or like planning what I was going to do the next day. If I like got an idea for what outfit I wanted to wear, if I didn't get out of bed and go lay out that outfit, I would just be ruminating on it all night and being like, oh, I don't want to forget that this is what I want to do when I wake up. And then I wouldn't be able to sleep. And then I'd wake up and I'd be so exhausted that I'd fall asleep in first or second period, usually math.
No,
Guilty.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Let me just say, I did say I dropped out, but I went back and got my diploma when you were a baby.
Proud of you for that. I'm the first woman on our side of the family to go to college, right? Mm-hmm. Let alone have a degree.
I did a year.
College.
I did a year.
I started college and then I dropped out of college and then I went back to college and then I dropped out of college and then I went back again and I finally finished with a psychology degree because it was actually interesting to me. But anything having to do with numbers and math, like chemistry, took me out. That class alone made me not want to be in school because I felt so inept.
I wanted to be a veterinarian with everything in my soul. From the time I was little, animals were my thing. I wanted to be a veterinarian. I was going to be a veterinarian until I got to high school and started looking at what it would require to be a veterinarian. And I was barely skimming through the algebras and the, geometry was okay, but algebra I could not process those formulas to save my life. And I'm like, then they're saying, well, you have to do all of these years of chemistry and high level. And I'm like,
I can't do it. It's intimidating. It's intimidating,
Yeah.
one, because you feel like, oh, there's something wrong with my brain. And then two, you don't have the support you need to be able to figure out how to learn those things. Because when I finally realized that, oh, I have a disability and it doesn't mean I'm bad at something, it means I need to change the way I approach something. That opened up so many doors of me being able to go back to school and figuring out how I needed to learn, not that I can't learn. And I think that was the biggest thing that,
And can I just say I really hate the word disability?
why?
I just because it's a negative connotation to you being different. It's like you just said, it's not that you can't do it, it's that you have to find a different way to do it. And so often we take the word, oh, I have a disability. And I've experienced this in coaching. The people that I have coached for years in the e-commerce world is they use that then as, well, I can't.
The crutch.
And I am all about you can. We just have to figure out how.
I think the word disability, because I've been in part of the disabled community my entire life. I volunteered, I thought I
You
was
have.
an advocate for, and it wasn't until my later 20s that I realized, oh wait, I'm actually a part of this community too. But the word disability obviously has its social connotation and how we perceive it, but it shouldn't
Right.
have a negative connotation.
Oh, I
And
agree.
that's the challenge.
Can we just say for a minute, because the influence you have of being in the disabled world and mine are connected, obviously,
I
through
wonder
your
how.
father. And I just,
Who did that?
yeah, I just want to take a minute because that was my big epiphany too, is being with somebody who was in a wheelchair and was involved in sports and scuba diving and all of these things. And that gave me drive of like,
If he can do it with that, then I can do it.
Yes. And I think you've experienced some of that same stuff.
Oh, absolutely. So backing up a little bit, we'll do a full deep dive episode into my parental figures. But for those of you that aren't familiar, my dad had polio when he was a kid, got into a car accident and was confined to a wheelchair all of his life, quadriplegic. And he was a part of the wheelchair rugby community, which I grew up in. And essentially, wheelchair rugby is this unique sport that you have to be a quadriplegic to play, which most of the people have spinal cord injuries. There are a couple different types of injuries or disabilities that people are born with that come into the sport to play. But being surrounded by individuals that have these life altering disabilities and seeing them perform at a high competition level and seeing them live their lives to the fullest, get married, have kids, have jobs, that as a child really shaped my perception of what it meant to have a disability and kind of this like, why does the rest of the world look down on them? Why do they get, these are the kind of people that people come up to them when they're out on the street and say, oh, I'm so glad you're out. And kind of hearing their side of that frustration and understanding the disability community from there was really impactful for me being able to go get my diagnosis and not have this kind of like, oh, there's something wrong with me feeling about it.
And can I just say, if you're looking for inspiration, you want to follow somebody who will really rock your world. Nick Vujicic, I think is how you say his name. He is the man with no arms and no legs, who is now a public speaker. I just got to see him in person, and I was just blown away.
Right, we don't need your shameless plugs.
Stop that. No, I think like, okay, you blew my thought there.
ADD.
No, but that's the stuff. Like, it's, you look at someone who's got the absolute most ridiculous thing going against them, and they are living a happy, joyful, successful life, which tells me, again, back to what I was saying, it's not that you can't, you have to find a different way, maybe a different path in life, a different, you might not be able to be a, world famous tennis player, but
Maybe you could.
maybe you could be.
Maybe you could, though. Have you watched the Paralympics? Because
No, I'm talking about no arms, no legs.
again, if there's a will, there's a way. That statement has never been more true.
Well, technology. Maybe you invent the technology to
There's
do something.
prosthetics.
I
Again, never say never.
But you get what I'm saying is, and again, it goes back to that, like your dad really like made me look at things differently. That community, like they're overcomers. So, and that's what I'm hoping by doing this, that we inspire people not to stay stuck because they have a diagnosis or get a diagnosis. It's not an end. It's a beginning.
It's a path to understanding yourself better and setting yourself up for success. And that is truly what the autism diagnosis for me has done. It's leveled up my ability to understand how I need to do things to be successful. And that's why I can work in the corporate world and understand the things that I need to do so I don't burn out every single year after starting a new job. Because if you are familiar with the cycle of starting a new job, being really excited about it, overdoing it over the first like 6 months because you're trying to prove your worth, you're trying to get a promotion, you're trying to whatever it is, you're just really excited about it. And then that's not sustainable. And then by month 8 or 9, you're completely burnt out and you want to quit. That pattern directly ties into the ADHD neurodiversity cycle.
I think a little piece of it in my case too was that whole teacher's pet thing. You get into the work world and you don't get to be a favorite anymore. They just want more from you.
Do, though.
If you're good at what
some people do get to be favorites, and sometimes you're not picked as a favorite even though you're doing all of this work, and then other times people take credit for your work fair. And you're like, what's going on? Like, why am I not getting recognized? And the social component, let's talk about that, because making friends, maintaining relationships was one of the most challenging things for me in my 20s and high school. I want to say high school, but I didn't actually have friends in high school, so can't really say.
Yeah, neither did I had a boyfriend. How was it?
I didn't even have a boyfriend because I was that like super cringy, nobody wanted to talk to me person because I had no social skills. I didn't know how to interact with other children.
And you could not have learned that from me because I didn't know how to.
No, I did learn. I did learn how not to interact because.
Well, yeah.
But I think the piece that really tied it in for me when I was an adult was figuring out that not everyone is going to be your best friend. Like it's not like moving the pieces along the board to get to the end point. They fall where they lie. And so you have your acquaintances in an outer circle, and then you have close friends in an inner circle, and then you have best friends in an inner circle. And it's not we're trying to get everybody to go to the best friend level. And that was the biggest thing for me of like, oh my gosh, I can actually maintain relationships now because I'm not trying to make everybody be the exact same as me.
I'm just now in that journey.
It's tough. And I'm fortunate enough that in my 20s, when you're loud and wrong and making, going out and drinking and partying and, friendships, they blow up, or, you have a fight with someone and it's not that big a deal. Like I was able to recover early in my life, if that makes sense. And I will have these long-standing friendships now that I'm developing because I have the skill. But you, having lived most of your life with the challenge of not having those long-term friendships, like you don't have high school people that you're connected with, do you?
I went the path of, I got married when I was 17, had my first child when I was 17. And so people my age like disconnected. Now we're acquaintances now. I still like once a year touch base with a couple of people I went to high school with, just a couple. But really, no, like I don't have long-term friends. I do have, like, in fact, just spent 3 days with him. I haven't seen her for like 10 years, but we got together and it was like as if
no time had passed.
We'd never been apart. And I'm like, okay, I don't have a lot of friends like that. That's special. And, I'm listening to you as you speak. It's like, I have this tendency to want everybody to be that special. Like, if you're my friend, I want you to be that special. And I've always given so much of myself to try to make that happen. And I'm learning that those friends come about not because you're giving of yourself. It is just because
you click,
you align, and you like talking to each other, and you have things in common, and your belief systems correspond, so you can have really deep, good discussions and all of that. And you can disagree.
That's a big one. I think that's more like,
and talk about it.
The emotional maturity aspect, which is also something I had to learn. But I think the big piece there is you shouldn't have that many close friends. You shouldn't have that many BFFs that you are aligned with, because people are so diverse and different. That's not saying you shouldn't have a lot of friends, but finding those special core people that you can maintain this incredibly, close bond with, you're not going to fit everybody into that category. And when you try to talk to people that are more comfortable in the acquaintance phase, or that you haven't, known for that long, it then starts to make them uncomfortable. And then the relationship breaks down from there, because there's something like you're trying to shove it too quickly, if that makes sense.
Or you make yourself a target,
or you
make yourself vulnerable to people seeing how badly you want the close friendship, and it's not that the motives are not the same.
The tendency for narcissists to target people with autism, that is a real thing that has been studied. That is multiple self-proclaimed narcissists have come out and be like, yeah, we select vulnerable people because they're easy targets. And I think from our perspective, seeing the amount of, I don't know if I've necessarily, I probably dated a few narcissists.
You think?
Well, okay. I see, that's the problem. I try to give them the benefit of the doubt. I'm like, oh, it wasn't that bad. Maybe they just had some things going on. And we understand and feel that we can just love them enough, because that's what we want. If someone just loved them enough, then they would change. Like, they would be felt, they would finally understand. Romance is another. Sticking to, hold on. I specifically wrote down questions for these ADD moments when we get off on a tangent and need to be recentered.
Where is it? It's on a tab here somewhere.
I got it. Thinking back to when we were in school, what did other people, what were the labels people used for kids that couldn't focus and had a hard time in school? Because I wonder if it's different for your generation than my generation.
Well, again, ADD, there was no H in it at that point. ADD came about, well, it didn't, I mean, it had been there all along, I'm sure, but it got labeled in the 80s.
Okay.
And it mainly was, the kids who were fidgety, and they never sat still.
Sorry, kids or
they didn't,
boys?
Well, it was predominantly, the focus was on boys. But that goes back to the generational thing of everything was about boys. Everything was about
It's boys. The patriarchy.
Even within my family unit, it was,
male-centered.
My brothers always got the special treatment. You got the leftovers, you got the seconds, you get into the shower before the water is truly warm because the boys need the hot water.
The difference of how neurodiversity shows up between men and women is just now starting to be discovered and uncovered.
We have different
We
brains.
have completely different brains, and the
We have different
social expectations are completely different, and why women tend to mask harder, and why so many women go undiagnosed. And it's, oh god, this could be a whole podcast episode of just ranting about women not being in studies because of their hormones are fluctuating. No duh. But women not being able to get the diagnoses they need to be able to set them up for success is a huge problem. And they are shamed more for having these types of issues and not given the grace of the support needs that would help them thrive. And so we're told as a woman, you have to act a certain way. You can't be argumentative. You have to be, soft and kind. And
you will love this. I just picked up a book at an estate sale. It's a trying to remember the date. I think it's a 1952 or 54 Amy Vanderbilt's Book of Etiquette. And I bought it just because it shows exactly what you're talking about right now. Looking back at this is how you are supposed to behave.
And that high mask and high survival, need for survival, I feel like it was more prevalent because you had to be someone that someone wanted to be around. Otherwise, you were living on your own. I had to go get a job and finance. You couldn't even open up a credit card without your husband's name until what, the 90s, 80s? Right. So yeah, as a woman, you had to, for survival reasons, be more palatable.
Pliable. Yeah.
Pliable is also another word, because manipulation and abuse, and another podcast, another episode.
But let's also be fair too. Everything evolves. And if you look back to the early 1900s and you look at how life was and how physical life was, it made sense. The roles were, man, go out, do that hard work, harvest the crops. Woman, take care of those kids, make sure there's food. Roles do make sense.
Hold on, because that is a wild misconception that women weren't out there in the crops and the kids weren't out there in the crops.
I get that they were. No, I'm not trying to say that they weren't.
We're presented
but
with
men
this
were
idea
in charge.
That
men were in charge of the hard physical labor and providing. It was the man's job to provide, the woman's job to take care of the house. And you know what? If you're happy in that situation and that works, that's great. But Little House on the Prairie, well, you saw how that turned out. There was a finale.
I didn't actually ever watch Little House on the Prairie, but
you never watched. You should.
But the entire concept of women being this stay at home, need to be protected, that's a misconception, wildly, because
I don't think it's about needing to be protected. And again, this is the difference between how you're looking at it. And, I do think, and again, we could go off on a whole nother tangent. I do think there is a core family element that is getting messed up, because it isn't black and white. It is finding, without all of this. Sorry. He hears me talking.
Yeah. It's another ADD moment. We have another ADD moment. We're going to tangent back to our handy dandy structure here, because we need structure to thrive. Did you...
I just think it just shows there's so much to talk about. This is going to be fun.
This is going to be really fun. And I want to hear from everybody else, kind of, if you're hearing things that we're saying that you're like, oh my gosh, wait, me too. Please let us know in the comments, because this is not a isolated experience. The more and more we share our challenges with people, the more and more people are like, oh my gosh, wait, I have that, but I'm not ADHD, or I'm not this. And
And we only have our experiences and our lives to go by. So what we're saying applies to us in our journey. Everybody needs to take their own journey, because every single person is so diverse, even within this spectrum thing. It's, to me, and I meant to say this earlier, to me, it is just us figuring out how the brain works, because look at the number of people that are on the spectrum. It's like, well, isn't a lot of this just the brain? It's just, this is how the brain processes.
Oh,
it's a computer, it's a machine, and it's might be stuck in Windows 98.
Well, yours might be. I'm at least on Windows 2000.
Didn't say. I'm trying to be inclusive here.
My biggest pet peeve.
You're in the millennial edition. Who are you kidding?
My biggest pet peeve is when people say, oh, well, everybody's a little autistic. This is...
Well, that is the danger of where we're going with broadening and broadening and broadening and broadening everything into neurodivergence.
Well,
at what point is normal then normal? That's my
two things. Society, the reason we have disabilities is because the way society is set up. If we had accessibility for all of the things that need accommodations, we wouldn't have disabilities, because a disability is to label the need for an adaptation or something support within society's standard. So that's important. 2, autistic traits are human traits. It's just the ability to turn them on and off, if you will. Like the need for stimming. Yeah, some people, tap their pen on their desk and they're like, oh, well, I'm not stimming. I don't have to do it. But some people literally have to do it to be able to focus. And that's the big difference of why we can't say, oh, everyone's autistic, or undermined the experience of what it means to have a disability. So I think that's important.
Yeah, and I want to also, a lot of people, these things overlap. So they're also complex PTSD. We know what PTSD comes from a traumatic event, that post-traumatic stress disorder, so that you still have anxiety related to that single event. Complex PTSD affects a lot of women my age now, because we grew up in that age where childhood things happening was very prevalent, very, very prevalent.
Y'all parents like the belt.
Because it was not called out. It was not a stigma. It was, it was just behind the closed doors. Nobody talked about it. So a lot of women have complex PTSD, and some of those symptoms also correspond to autism and ADHD symptoms.
Well, how many people?
So that's why I think keeping it neurodivergence in keeping our discussion and how do we get through life with neurodivergence is very important.
How many people have undiagnosed neurodivergence that were overstimulated from having children and didn't have the regulation tools to be able to cope, and did something that now traumatized their child, right? Those are the pieces that's interesting. One, as a individual with childhood trauma who is now raising another generation that is aware of not wanting to pass on that generational trauma. These are conversations I've had to have with my therapist of what do you do in those moments? How do you become self-aware and have the coping mechanisms to handle your emotions when those weren't things that previous generations had or even knew that they needed to be cognizant of?
And they say it takes 3 generations to break that cycle. And I was the first generation. So you're the second generation. Baby boy, it's got it going on.
Good luck out there. It's a crazy world. I think we never answered this question. We never talked about the differences of labels of children. What we talked about it in your generation. In my generation, they were the troublemakers, the people that couldn't sit still and focus. They were the class clowns. They were the disruptors.
Mm-hmm.
And that's also very like, if you're kind of taking on that persona, and that's like like rewarding, you're getting the attention that you need for this disruptive behavior and fitting in your own way. I think that piece is really interesting.
There's so much diversity in all of this too, because then you also take that, and some of those people grew up to keep rolling with that creativity because they weren't stifled. They didn't let everybody saying you need to calm down stop them. They've gone on to do great things in their life. And then there are the people who took it to heart and shrunk themselves,
internalized it,
and they're unhappy in life, and they lash out and they do things on social media. And we've got like, oh, there's so much to talk about in all of this, because
this brings
it can go so many different
This is another
directions.
segue to a book, because I like literature and reading. This is the Pragmatic Tools for Being Crazy Happy. It's a short read, easy for anyone who, if this talk is resonating with you right now and you want to be happier in your life, this book is for you. Trust me, you can do it. Power through it, read it, and it will change your life, because this is the book that I read that was like an aha moment for me, that made a bunch of pieces fall into place and helped me understand how I could change my mindset to actually enjoy living my life and not just feeling like I'm surviving through it.
Yeah. Can I just say it's never too late?
Oh, yeah.
It's never too late. No matter what age you are watching this, it is never too late to work on undoing these little canals that have been dug through your brain, giving you messages that you should be this, or you shouldn't be this, or you should do this. Like, that can stop, and you can just be comfortable being who you are.
Can I just tell you, I had this conversation with one of my friends the other day, that I told them I was starting a podcast with my mom, and my mom finally accepted all of the neurodiverse things that I was telling her for years. How many years? And she was like, oh my God, I have to tune in and listen, because this is me and my mom. And there are so many people whose children my age are aware of it, recognize it, see the patterns in their parents, and their parents just like, I'm not neurodiverse, because there's that stigma against it. And how much happier are you now knowing that you can set yourself up for success with these tools?
Yeah. I mean, again, it's a new journey for me. And sometimes it's still, I get frustrated. Like, okay, I have all this information now. What do I do with it? How do I figure this out? Like, I'm still in that, like, you've already gone through it, and I'm just now like, but things are making more sense. And when things make sense, then you can stop things from happening that have happened your whole life, and the ways life has treated you, because you do have control over it, and you can look at things differently and go in a new, I mean, you probably know this. I learned to be very negative. I learned to be a victim. And I have been working on that for like the last decade. But those patterns come from deep places that you have to dig into and decide, make a choice that that's not who you want to be, because nobody in that place is happy. It's not a happy place. That's a defeatist place. That's I am settling for this, and I'm just going to take whatever life throws me place.
And I do want to put a note on that, because that was the same mentality that I had. It was what you raised me to have, like, unconsciously. I picked up on that somehow. And that's when I started recognizing and wanted to start this podcast. Like, the From Wise to Wise literally is taking all of those, like, why me? Why does this happen? Why does the universe keep doing this? Into how do I understand how to avoid that and overcoming that victim mentality that is so detrimental, because it's so easy to fall into. But once you recognize the pattern of it, it literally changes your outlook on life and flips everything 180. And I do want to say, not to pull the steam out of anyone's engine, it takes years. This isn't something you're going to listen to one time or read one book and all of a sudden everything's going to change. It's going to start to change, but it is a multi-year long process of tears, and progress is not linear. And you're going to go great one day, bad the next day, great one day. And that's normal and it's okay. And you can do it. And we're here to support you. But it's tough. And I know that's not easy to hear because your life has probably been tough and you want it to stop being tough. And that's why you're listening. But unfortunately,
Yeah, if you don't like roller coasters, then yeah, it's gonna suck even more.
yeah, that phrase,
It's a roller coaster.
life's not fair. Hate that phrase. But unfortunately, it's a little too real. If you could summarize your biggest why about your life that's answered by understanding your neurodiversity, what would it be? Now, take a couple seconds to process what that question means.
Yeah, mine I think is why have I been through so much betrayal? I feel like my life has been a big long string of betrayals.
Is that the victim mentality coming back up, or is this?
No, because you said it's the why. That's the question that's led me.
No, the
to
answer.
Go, like,
what's the
why?
answer? Oh,
what's the
here,
answer?
let me say the question again.
Oh, okay, let's do that again.
If you could summarize the biggest why about your life that was answered by understanding your neurodiversity, what would it be?
The biggest thing for me is the amount of betrayal or perceived betrayal in my life, and now understanding the dynamics of like relationships and how I have contributed to that by not understanding how people were perceiving me and how I was relating to them. And that's a new thing this year. Like I'm really diving into like what is my part in all the things that I've been through in my life that have kept me back. Like
It's a big one.
I've taken big, huge steps back where I'm like, wait a minute, I'm smart enough. I've got all this going for me, but I can't seem to get where I want to be. And so it's been like, okay, why? Why? And it's a big exploration.
Are you at wise yet? Or are we still on the journey?
I'm getting close.
I believe in you.
I understand. Now I just have to learn how to implement.
You were talking about people perceiving you. Do you feel like sometimes your life is like a movie? Like you're playing a script?
Well, I mean, I am a YouTuber, so it kind of is.
Do you feel like this is a big piece of like the masking that I recognized is knowing when there's people that can see you and this kind of like persona that you have when people can see you?
Well, I think that goes into my fear of being seen as stupid, ugly. I don't know. What are the 100 other things I was called my whole life that I fight against, and trying to be that performer for the teacher because I want you to see like I am cool. Like
I want to fit
believe
in.
I'm cool.
I want to be accepted like all the other people.
Yeah.
How do I do that? Why isn't it working?
Accepted. That's a really good word.
We're going to wrap up today's podcast with 3 book recommendations that I'm going to highly, highly, highly encourage anybody read.
And we're going to link those down in the description.
They will all be linked in the description. We'll start with an easy read, Pragmatic Tools for Being Crazy Happy. A medium read, Unmasked. This is a book of more stories from people about their neurodivergence and their experience in their life. And then the hard read, if you're into the nitty-gritty details and you like to deep dive, this one's for you.
It's not quite as long as War and Peace, so it's okay.
The writing's tiny, though.
Close. It's close.
But we are going to be talking about more topics. If you have topics that you'd like us to talk about or more questions, please leave them in the comments. Maybe we'll do a response podcast. But
that'd be fun.
The next topic for our episode is going to be about, what did we say? Relationships? Was that the next one? Yeah, love specifically. Love, toxicity,
What's love have to
and
do with it?
narcissism.
It's just a secondhand emotion.
What?
It's a
Oh,
song.
gosh.
It's a song.
Oh, that reminds me. Have you ever heard the phrase echophalia? So it's something where, you know how sometimes like you hear, if I say, oh, I just bought my couch, what's the first like jingle that comes into your mind? Oh, I got my couch at Living Spaces.
That's a millennial thing, obviously.
This happened the other day and I was like, oh my gosh, I have to explain it to my mom because we do this.
Well, it's what I just did. It's what I just literally did when you said it's about love. And I said, what's love got to do with it? Because that's a song by Tina Turner that everybody should know.
Well, clearly I missed the mark. But that like unconscious need to sing songs, like when you're not even realizing it, or like chirp back these like fun, that is the biggest like love language of people with neurodivergence, is like we just respond back to each other with memes and songs and things. Anyway, I got way off course. Thank you for joining this episode of From Wise to Wise. I hope you enjoyed it. We will definitely stay more focused in the next one. I'm Jordan. This is Danny, and we'll see you next time.